Your data, probably one of the most valuable things that you have right now, not just personally in some abstract sense, but in terms of actual cash amounts in the right hands. You are being monitored right now by a largely unregulated, little scrutinized, logging the movements of tens of millions of Americans constantly, 24 hours a day. And I don't mean this as a criticism of the NSA or other some kind of government bureaucracy. I mean a very literal, like tracking chip inside of you, but it's inside your cell phone. Very important data has been leaked to the New York Times, revealing this very real nightmare scenario. Right now, tens of millions of Americans are being tracked by private companies whose data is being collected. These companies have little to no regulation whatsoever, and even less oversight. The New York Times has released the Privacy Project file, which holds more than 50 billion ping locations from the photos of more than 12 million Americans as they move throughout major cities. These 12 million Americans, and assuming many more from other companies, are tracked 24 hours a day, and there is a massive database of every place they have ever been and how long they were there. The data was provided to the New York Times by sources who asked to remain anonymous because they were not authorized to share it and face severe penalties if they were to have their identities revealed. The New York Times states, after months of sifting through the data, tracking the movements of people across the country, and speaking with dozens of data companies, technologists, lawyers, academics who study this field, we feel the same sense of alarm. In the cities that the data file covers, it tracks people from nearly every neighborhood and block, whether they live in mobile homes in Alexandria, Virginia, or luxury towers in Manhattan. One search turned up more than a dozen people visiting the Playboy Mansion, some overnight. Without much effort, we spotted visitors to the estates of Johnny Depp, Tiger Woods, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, connecting the device's owners to the residences indefinitely. If you lived in one of these cities, the dataset covers the use apps that share your data location, from anything from weather apps to local news apps to coupon savers. You could be in there too. Now, this great treasure trove of data didn't come from a telecom giant or a tech company giant. It didn't even come from a governmental bureaucracy. This came from a location data company, one of dozens quietly collecting precise movements using software slipped into mobile phone apps without your knowledge. They see everything you do, from where you go grocery shopping, where you go to the doctor. They know whether or not you see a psychiatrist. They know what your pharmacy is. They know where your kids go to school. They know the route that you take every day to work and everywhere else. They know how long you're in the bathroom. From their ability to ping data in your cell phone. That's how much they know. They know how much you sleep. They know how much time you spend at home. They know how much you're around your family. They know probably more about your life than you do through the use of computers and this tracking technology. Now, in a very strange moment, the New York Times managed to criticize commercialism, even if they didn't realize what they were doing. William Staples, founding director of the Surveillance Studies Research Center at the University of Kansas, the seduction of these consumer products is so powerful that it blinds us to the possibility that there is another way to get the benefits of the technology without the invasion of privacy. But there is. All the companies collecting this location information act as what I have called tiny brothers, using a variety of data sponges to engage in everyday surveillance. This data collection, every single tiny little detail of your life, is perfectly legal. There's nothing wrong about this. Well, nothing legally wrong with it whatsoever. There are no laws regarding this. There's no oversight of this. In the United States, as in most of the world, there are no federal law limits to what has become a vast and lucrative trade in human trafficking. That human trafficking is your data. Everything you do, everywhere you go, everything about you. Now, we know that some of this data has already been collected. We've had the Cambridge Analytical scandal. We've had numerous instances where this has been released by Facebook, Twitter. In other words, everybody's had their scandal of data being leaked out. And they say it's only shared with verified partners. But then again, if that were true, then the whole Cambridge Analytica scandal wouldn't have happened. And besides, would we really believe these tech companies? The people that censor us on a daily basis? The people who have acquiesced to the Operation Mockingbird by the CIA to control dissent? The people who shut down the Twitter account of the Russian embassy inside of Syria? Who shut down the account of Bashar al-Assad, the rightful and elected leader of Syria, who at the same time can allow someone like Donald Trump to routinely violate Twitter's terms of services. These are the people that we trust? Facebook censoring unknown numbers of pages that criticize Israel. And I don't mean anti-Semitism, I mean legitimate criticisms of Israel, like the constant murders of Palestinians. Many pages whose only crime is not following U.S. foreign policy have been censored by these same people, and we're supposed to believe them? We're supposed to trust them with our data? I think that's nonsense. But look at what they said here, that we can have all this technology without the totalitarianism, so to speak. Well, I guess we're not going to have that under capitalism. I think it's pretty obvious that when this data is collected primarily to sell things to you, to collect consumer data, for targeted ads and things like that, that this is being fueled by capitalism itself. And that's what it's there for. It's there to make money. I think that's pretty much undeniable. And it's not even being done by the government. So there's no blaming the state for this one. But what about political work? What if you happen to organize in a peaceful, lawful, legitimate, democratic way? Not even something radical, which would be underground or legal. Let's say above the board, mainstream, completely milquetoast, #resistance style activism. Even then, you're still being tracked and recorded. The New York Times reports protesters were tracked just as vigorously. After the pings of Trump supporters basking in victory vanished from the National Mall on Friday evening, they were replaced hours later by those of participants of the Women's March. A crowd of nearly 500,000 descended on the Capitol. Examining just a photo from the event, you might be hard-pressed to tie a face to a name. But in our data, pings at the protest connected to clear trails through the data documenting the lives of protesters in the months before and after the protest, including where they lived and worked. In other words, even when you're part of the Democratic Party's so-called resistance, you're still tracked. They know exactly everywhere you went in that protest and then digitally followed you home. And it doesn't even matter if you wear a mask. They still know. As long as your phone is on you, this is the risk you take. Even if you're as completely useless as, say, the Pussy Hat March, you're still being monitored and tracked, even though you're serving the establishment. So imagine what's happening to people who are going against the grain. Imagine those who are resisting the establishment and are calling out the crimes of this system. Imagine what they're going through. And all this is being done by a handful of private companies. What private companies are doing this? Odds are you've never heard of them. And that's for a reason. They're only known in certain business circles. So what does all this amount to? Is this just innocent data collection for advertising companies to know what kind of products to ram down your throat when you try to live your daily life and get bombarded by 1,000 ads for stuff that you don't even need, but that you're socially conditioned into thinking that you need? If even some of the mainstream academia are pointing out our mindless worship of these things, which Marx would call commodity fetishization, and that our identities, our lives, our souls are being tied to these products through advertisement and manipulation. And this is all being used to do that. Are we fools to think it would stop there? This is going to go on even further. This is going to go into the realm of, for the lack of a better term, totalitarianism. Look at the United States around you. Look at everything that's going on. Every single protest, every single outrage, every single crime that's being committed against the people. Everything. And you're going to tell me that all of that is not going to be used to put down regular people for resisting? Look at everybody who's suffering right now because of the fentanyl crisis, the unemployment crisis, the unemployment/underemployment crisis. Every single major economist is warning us that there is a crash coming, and one that's going to be far worse than 2008. They all know it across the board that this is coming. And what happens when capitalism goes into crisis? As Lenin said, fascism is capitalism in decay. And this is going to be that tool that's used to do it. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Well, we already knew there was stuff like this here. No, we suspected, and many of us would bet our bottom dollar that this was going on. But now we know for a fact. Now we know for a fact that this is happening. And we also know the scope of it. We know the details. We know the unending amounts of data they have. Despite every ridiculous boogeyman ever created about the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc, this trumps all of those fanciful claims by a factor of 10. So as long as you remain passive to every bad thing that's happening to you as a result of this system, hey, you got nothing to worry about. But the second you've decided that this is too much, what do you think is going to happen? You think the people in power and the corporate entities that fund them will simply have the moral character not to abuse this kind of data? You'd be nothing but a fool to think that. And that is the reality that we're heading to right now. Even in some of the worst dystopian science fiction novels, or movies, video games, this is the kind of stuff that happens. The exaggerations that we use to make a point in literature and art is now real. And the frightening reality of it. And by no means should I suggest that this is just the United States. As a Canadian, I'm sure I'm probably in just as much trouble. I'm sure many people in the UK, probably Russia, Australia, Japan, God knows Japan, given how technologically plugged in the society is. But there's a unique context when it's America. That's something that's a lot more frightening, considering there's much more dissent or potential for dissent in the United States than there is in many other countries. I wouldn't be surprised at all if this was being used against the Yellow Vests. But understand, this is one of those things that's not a slippery slope fallacy. If history has shown us anything, that when capitalism goes into large enough of a crisis, it will use anything and everything in order to try to hold itself together, rather than be removed from Earth as it should. I don't mean to sound melodramatic here, but this is the reality that we face. The boogeyman that we have always suspected was in the closet in terms of tracking and state surveillance, we now know for an absolute fact is going on. And they've got everybody listed. I'm not telling you to get rid of your cell phone or what apps to download, etc. I don't know what to do. I don't have enough knowledge in the cell phone and technology field to know how to deal with a situation like this. Just know this is happening, and that this is something that you need to watch out for. I'm going to assume most of the people that watch my show are politically aware of what's going on. And I'm going to assume probably a certain amount of them are politically active, many of them protesters. And they, above anyone else, should know that this is going on. So I just wanted to bring this to you. I wanted you, my audience, to know that this is going on. Because I suspect this is one of those things the mainstream media is probably just going to report for one day and then sweep it under the rug. Now, I hate to reference a meme, but if they'll do it to Jeffrey Epstein, think of what they'll do to a nobody like you. And I don't mean to sound like an Alex Jones conspiracy theorist type, because this isn't a conspiracy. This is very real. We now know for a fact this kind of thing is going on. And we have to be prepared, because when that economic crash happens, the capitalist class, the 1%, whatever it is you want to call them, they're going to do everything they can to hold on to their power, their privilege, their wealth. And let me tell you this, one of their billions of dollars means more to them than your life, your family, your freedom, your security, your rights as a human being. All I can do is warn you that this is happening. I don't know what to do about it. I think that's a dialogue that the American people have to have with themselves as to how they're going to deal with this kind of situation. And I think that's something that the American people need to decide very soon. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.